You've just watched the little blurb on the addressing the throttle plates themselves and how to get those tuned in properly, so we've done that. But before we proceed, we want to use either some real fine sandpaper. I use gray Scotch-Brite. It doesn't remove any metal, but it cleans it up beautifully. And we want to get into the bores and clean them out, which I've already done. And we want to use it to clean up the bushings where our new felt throttle shafts are going to go. If you handle these very gently, you can also just clean these up a little bit. This is your seal retainer. So now let's begin. The first thing we do, take a seal retainer, take a seal, and use your thumbnail, work it in there. Look at it on the front to make sure that it's not pooched out. It wants to be in the retainer rather than just kind of being roughly shoved in there. I blow any fuzz out of it, set it in place, press it down gently to just get it started. Then we use a flat hammer and we tap the retainer and the seal into place. Again, check and make sure that it's symmetrical, that it's not sticking out at an odd angle, and then sight along here and make absolutely certain that that seal retainer is not standing proud of the aluminum casting. This is why we use a flat hammer. We can tap it down to where it's perfectly flush. Grab our other retainer, set the seal in it. See, this one's a little bit wrong. I'm going to pull it out and reseat it so that the square edge of the seal is inside up against the edge of the retainer ring. Set it in place. Sometimes you'll find that you can actually push these in just with your thumbs, but I don't bother. I just use this little hammer, tap them down perfectly flush. We're now ready to install the actual throttle shaft itself. We want to put a drop of 3-in-1 oil on each shaft, seal. It'll spread itself around by capillary action and natural wicking as the shaft rotates. Now we begin with the shaft. This is the one I just took out. Perhaps yours look like this, maybe they don't. The ones that we use, of course, have been freshly plated, but this shaft is not in real bad shape. We can clean any heavy junk off it. The reason that we don't want to use a wire wheel on the shafts themselves is because a wire wheel is going to cut off any remaining zinc plate that's on there, and if you don't live in a really corrosive environment like near the ocean or where there's a lot of humidity, this is a perfectly usable throttle shaft. Now what we do is put it through, and you'll notice it's really common to just have some of the threads of the new felt seal, little micro threads. I just want to push it through there once just to kind of round it out a little bit. Now, on this end, we put first the plastic shim, then the steel shim, we push it back through. Make sure that it's rotating nice and freely. You can work it a bunch of times and it'll spread the oil around, and it'll tend to just rub away any of those little microscopic hairs that are left in there. And it's normal to feel a little bit of resistance. They might have been turning just freely enough that you could literally blow on them and it would move, but don't worry, that seal is doing its job now. So it's gonna provide just a very small amount of resistance. Now, everything's all in line. We put the retainer on the other side. Note that this side does not get a shim. It gets this larger metal retainer. We slide that on. We grab the spring. The looped end goes on first. Now, you'll see that the end of this shaft, we're going to rotate it to where we're looking more or less at the screw holes as they're going to go through into the throttle plate. You'll see that the end of the shaft is machined identically to, you'll see how I put that on there. The spring is engaged here, but it's not engaged here yet. Set your locking washer, set the jam nut on it, and just get it started. Now we want to make sure that we're not binding on any loops of the spring. You can hold this with your hand and just give the nut a couple of turns. We don't want to start to compress anything yet. We're just going to get it on there to where it's snug. We're not compressing the locking washer yet, and the spring is not engaged. We're basically doing the same thing in reverse that we did to remove it, but this is where things can go horribly wrong. We rotate the shaft. We note the orientation. Hold it perfectly perpendicular. The throttle plate will slide right into place. Then we can start closing the throttle. And we notice, oh, it's way off. Pick it up, rotate it a little bit. Rotate it back down. Oh, it's binding because it's still off. Push it in a little further. And now we reach a point where the throttle will close all the way. We look where the first bypass hole is, right where that throttle plate's going to close. You can kind of press with your finger a little bit and then open it and just tap it shut a little bit, and you'll notice that the